And let there be football. Welcome to Move the Chains. I'm your host, Jonathan Bam Rivers. On my MTC call sheet today, I'm going to go bridge or buried. I've got 4 teams that I want to talk about regarding the NFL, and I'm going to discuss whether or not there's a bridge to them making the playoffs from where they are, or are they buried. Now, for the teams or team that I think is buried in this scenario, don't think it means I'm insinuating they're buried for time to come. Or don't think that they have a bridge for a time to come. I'm simply talking about 2025 in this scenario. In the way that the NFL is this year is playing out to be exactly what they wanted in my estimation. All right, in my Chain Gang chat, I'm going to be asking questions via social media coming from the fans that I see regarding college football. And NFL referees, to probably 85% of the country and NFL fans say they're biased. I don't think they're biased, but I do think there's a problem. And I'll tell you why them being biased is a nonsense narrative. Last but not least, same rules, different results. And that's because some teams know what they're doing and some don't. All that more here on Move the Chains, but you know how we do it. Let's kick it off with the opening toss. Parity is what the NFL is designed to have. It's what the NFL is designed to be. The Chicago Bears are in the playoffs if they started today and they weren't last year. The Houston Texans are not. The Chiefs are not. The Patriots are. Okay? The Denver Broncos are trying to build something, but they were in it last year. There are so many different teams that are not in the playoffs this year that were in it last year if the playoffs started today, and it's what the NFL wants. The NFL wants parity. That's why the rules are structured that way. So what I wanted to do is I want to take a little time to talk about some teams that you would consider on the fringe, teams that are at 500 or a game above 500, and I'm going to tell you whether or not there's a bridge to them making the playoffs and why or why not, or whether I think their 2025 will be buried. So I want to start with the Houston Texans. Now, the Houston Texans came into the game against the Bills Thursday night at 5-5, and now they're 6-5. And if you can see here, this is a team, I'm going to tell you guys something. The best defense in football, you can look at defensive EPA, you can look at defensive total yards per game given up, you can look at defensive total points per game given up. They're just elite. And I told my director this before the show. I said Deshaun Watson is the best thing that ever happened to the Texans for 2 reasons. One, he was a quarterback that had them as a playoff contender almost every year he was there. He was an MVP candidate. Then he got hurt, and then all the issues took place off the field for Deshaun Watson. Then they traded him to the Cleveland Browns for a king's ransom, and they've paid it off through the draft. But let me tell you about Houston, why I think there's a bridge to Houston making the playoffs. The first 3 games Houston lost this year, remember they started 0-3. They lost by a total of 13 points. There has been no loss in their 5 losses that they've lost that's been more than 8 games. And this team, every loss that they've had to endure this year was to a team that is currently in the playoffs. So if the NFL actually took into account strength of schedule or anything of that nature when it comes, if there was a rating, the Houston Texans would be one of the teams that has played the toughest schedule in football. So when you look at a team that's won the division the past 2 seasons, they don't have C.J. Stroud. They haven't had him for the past 3 games, yet they haven't lost a game. And I can't really point to anything on this team and say, hey, this is where Houston's been bad. This is why they're just 6-5. I told you it's because the NFL is better. It's because teams are better. And I think DeMeco Ryans is he's one of the best coaches in football. And people say these things and they say it flippantly and they say it because it sounds good. I'm just telling you that he's one of the best coaches in football because he was one of the best defensive coordinators when he was a defensive coordinator in San Francisco. He's built a team. He's not just focused on how the quarterback can be successful, while that is a part of the mix. The Houston Texans are built from front to back on defense, and they've been great in terms of free agency and mixing their draft picks. This is why they can go 3-0 with Davis Mills as their starter, because he's done what he's supposed to do as the backup, and that's keep the team steady, and that's what DeMeco Ryans does. So there's a bridge for this team, even though they've still got the Colts twice and they still got the Kansas City Chiefs. 2 of those 3 games are on the road. Their defense is elite enough for them to continue to tread water and even get better. Just because they started slowly doesn't mean that they cannot progress. And remember, this is a team I said would be a dark horse for the AFC Championship game, and that's not out of the question. All right, let's go to the next team I want to talk about here. The Baltimore Ravens. Do you ever think back and wonder what would have happened to Baltimore? Not if they didn't lose that game by 1 point to the Buffalo Bills, because we both and everybody, I think, can agree that the Ravens nor the Bills are what a lot of people assumed they would be this year, but that's the NFL. But can you assume what the Ravens would have been if Mike Macdonald had never left for Seattle? Do you know this year they've given up games of 30-plus points 4 times already? Last year, they gave up 30-point games 4 times all year. And the year before that, Mike McDonald's last year's defensive coordinator, including the playoffs, they only gave up 2 games of 30-plus or more. And it's an identity thing with Baltimore, and this is a team that I still think can win the AFC North. You know, my producer, Josiah, asked me where the Ravens done a few weeks ago. I said, if Lamar Jackson doesn't come back healthy, they're done. But the AFC North has provided an opportunity to every team, I think, except Cleveland, to win this division. And if you're Baltimore, a lot of times it's just muscle memory. You're good because you know how to be good. And there are so many division games left ahead for the Ravens. I don't see a role where they can't go out and win a division. So there's definitely a bridge for the Baltimore Ravens because they have a 2-time MVP at quarterback, because they have a defensive coordinator in Zach Orr who has not yet been good. And I think if that trend continues, they might have a new defensive coordinator because that may be the issue. But if he's continuing to grow, and remember what this team did last year, they got better defensively as this season went on. If that happens, then this team can absolutely make a run. So I'm not going to give up on the Baltimore Ravens because I think they get the benefit of the doubt. They're still a very talented football team. They've dealt with a lot of injuries like a lot of teams have, especially to the quarterback position, but they're getting better, and then they're winning close games. Don't despise small beginnings, but don't despise close wins as well. They matter, especially when there's a team that's trying to get back on track. All right, the next organization I want to get to here are the Detroit Lions. I want to continue to reiterate that I picked the Lions not to miss the playoffs, but not because I think that they're an organization or a program headed in the wrong direction. I just thought that this could be an off year. And as it stands right now, they're the 8th seed in the NFC. Now, there's still a bridge for them making the playoffs. I'm just telling you that. They're not as good on the road as they are at home. I've said that before on this show. But they're top 5 in EPA offense and they're top 5 in EPA defense, which stands for expected points added. And that just simply means what certain plays happen and how they dictate the outcome of the game and what it may be. That's what EPA is, just an advanced metric stat. But again, advanced metrics are okay, but they're not everything. But this is what I'll say about Detroit. When I told you they wouldn't make the playoffs, I looked at the changing in coordinators, and everybody said, well, it's still Dan Campbell, and I believe that. But you know what Dan Campbell is doing now? He's calling plays. Do you remember the Philadelphia Eagles 2 years ago, the year before they won the Super Bowl, where they started, 9-1, 10-1, and they lost 6 of their last 7 or something like that, and then they got bounced in the first round against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Brian Johnson was their offensive coordinator, and he lasted 1 year. Now, Morton is the offensive coordinator of the Lions. I'm not saying it's headed in that trajectory. I'm not saying the Lions are in that same situation, but this was a team that lost their first playoff game last year at home in the divisional round. I understand what they were defensively. They're banged up again defensively in the secondary, though. And Dan Campbell, you saw it against their game last week when they were playing the Eagles on Sunday Night Football. A lot of those gambles didn't pay off for them, and those were the exact reasons why I thought the Lions might not make the playoffs, because those gambles don't always pay off. Injuries to a team that's very physical are not hard necessarily to predict, even though you can't predict injuries. And coordinators not being there matters. It matters because Dan Campbell didn't have to worry about calling plays. All he had to worry about was making sure the game was at hand. Now that has expanded his role, and it can have an adverse effect. Things just don't look the same. But there's still a bridge for the Detroit Lions because they are a very well-run organization, and I still believe in Dan Campbell and that offense when the play-action game is ready. The last team I want to talk about is the Carolina Panthers. I'm not going to dismiss Carolina as if they're not a good team, okay? This is why when people say, well, the Packers lost to the Panthers, they keep saying it as if Carolina isn't better. That's what they are. They're better. You know, they're top 10 in rushing, but they're not very good offensively. The quarterback has just a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. He's not top 15 in touchdown passes or QBR or passing yards, any of that stuff. The defense is not elite at all, but they're beating teams that is at their weight class, but not yet beating the teams that are above their weight class, which is why they're buried for 2025. If you look at the remaining schedule for the Panthers, they have to play every team in the NFC West that is above 500, which are the San Francisco 49ers, the Seattle Seahawks, and the LA Rams, and then they've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers twice. Carolina is up and coming, but for the 2025 season, due to their schedule and their lack of experience, I've got to say they're buried. All right, when we come back from the break, it'll be your questions via social media on my Chain Gang Chatter. Back when we move the chains, right after this. Welcome back to Move the Chains. Before we get to the Chain Gang Chatter, me answering your questions via social media, I want to take this opportunity, as always, to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for the opportunity to host Move the Chains. I also want to thank you, the fans, for watching on whatever platform you watch. The best production crew in the business always gets the job done. Shout out to them, as always. And you see the QR code at the bottom of the screen. Check it out if you want to better your life financially, spiritually, mentally, and physically. Look at the protection plan and move forward. Having said all that, you know what time it is, man. Let's hit the Chain Gang Chatter. All right, college football questions coming up for your boy, and I want to answer them. So let's get to the first question. Should Lane Kiffin leave Ole Miss? I don't think he should leave Ole Miss because Lane Kiffin is able to do something at Ole Miss that he hasn't done anywhere else, and that's build something. Lane Kiffin has been a lily pad hopper his whole career, and that's not an issue if that's what he wanted to do. But he's built something at Ole Miss. Ole Miss hasn't been in this situation. And this is where I have to say Ole Miss is not what I thought they'd be this year. Remember when I said you can't trust Ole Miss? You can trust them now because they're a proverbial lock for the college football playoff. Now, if they lose in the college football playoff, I'm not going to go back and say I told you so because I didn't think they'd get there. I thought they'd drop a game to Florida and not get over the hump. But congratulations to what they're doing. But if I'm Lane Kiffin, I think you stay at Ole Miss because this is something that you've built, and this is something that you can continue to build. And I think his personality is infectious at Ole Miss, and I think he's going to be able to recruit. He's going to be able to compete. He's going to be able to do things at a high level down there in Oxford. All right, what's the next question that I have? Can a 3-loss team make the college football playoff? Absolutely. I think if it's a team like Alabama, and this is what I mean. Alabama has 2 losses, but only 1 conference loss. So obviously they're still in position right now to play for the SEC championship game. Now, a 3-loss Alabama team not getting to the conference championship is different than them winning out their last 2 games, one beating Auburn, of course, in the Iron Bowl, and then losing to maybe a Texas A&M or Georgia in the SEC championship game. If you look at their resume, Alabama has a lot of good wins. They've been one of the best teams in the country all year long. So let's not use the brick wall of a 3-loss team just because it hasn't happened before. Well, this season has dictated that it could be an opportunity for a team like Alabama. And again, I still don't think they've played their ceiling game, and that just may be their story this year. But the question is, can not playing their ceiling game still lead them to the college football playoff and to a possible national championship, even with 3 losses? And I think the answer is yes there. All right, what's my last question? What top 25 team do I consider overlooked? I think it's Notre Dame. And I don't think it's Notre Dame necessarily because of what they're doing this year. I think they're one of the best teams in college football. But I think they're overlooked because of what they didn't do. They didn't do what a lot of programs have done in the past when they let go of, or when one of their coaches, and Brian Kelly, their head coach, left to go to LSU. They didn't look outside of South Bend for the answer because they saw the answer on their staff in Marcus Freeman, who has since then already taken them to a national championship game and is in firm contention right now for another college football playoff berth. He knows how to recruit. He knows how to level up with his players. They've got a young quarterback playing well. They've got a Heisman Trophy candidate at running back. Their defense is phenomenal. They're phenomenal up front, but he also knows the landscape. And I don't think Notre Dame, ladies and gentlemen, while it is a prestigious school, I don't think it's a highly sought-after school by head coaches. I just don't think it is. I think with some of the academic restrictions that were on there, and even with the transfer portal now, Notre Dame is a niche job. And Marcus Freeman has grown up in that program, and now he's growing that program. All right, when we come back from the break, NFL officials are biased. They're not. And I'm going to tell you why when we come back on my favorite segment of the show right after this. Welcome back into the show. It's been another banger, as always, here on Move the Chains. Shout out to everybody involved. But now it's time for me to get excited. I'm always excited, but I take it to another level during this segment because, you know, it's my favorite segment of the show. It's time for my nonsense narrative. Run it. So the next man up mentality does mean something because you can't quit. I try not to get upset over this stuff, and I try to let everybody have their opinion. And there are just some things that really just become hard to stomach or hard to hear or just hard to continually listen to, and that's that NFL officials are biased. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise you this is what I feel. They're not biased. I think they're just bad. I think officiating is bad at the professional level. I think it's bad at the collegiate level. Even when I see high school games, I think officials aren't that great. And it's not because they don't want to be. One, I think officials, of course, have full-time jobs, so this isn't their full-time employ. So it's not something that they can fully pour into like a professional athlete. But secondly, I think a lot of officials haven't played the game when you get to the collegiate and the professional level. So when you haven't played the game, you don't know the simple nuances of this game. And let me get this graphic that I want to show you guys here. If you look at NFL teams with the most penalties as favorites, look at the top 5 teams. Bills, Chiefs, Eagles, 49ers, and Ravens. These are the teams that have all been to a conference championship game and have been penalized the most. So how are you going to tell me that the best teams in the NFL have been penalized the most, and yet they're biased? And the team that a lot of people think always gets the calls aren't even first on this list. So I think it's a league-wide issue when it comes to officiating. I don't think they're biased. I just think there are a lot of different factors that go into officials not being as good as we want them to be. So when you move forward, I'm a guy about integrity. I love the integrity of the game. And I also think that when people come up with conspiracy theories and narratives such as this, it hurts the integrity of the game because people go into a game preempting what they feel like is going to happen in terms of penalties. And if a team doesn't commit a penalty, it's not because they planned properly or were legitimate in their fundamentals. It's because the officials helped them. So let's just get off of that. I'm not going to change your mind, and that's fine. I just wanted to give you my point of view. When we come back from the break, everything is set up to be the same, yet the results are always different. I wonder why that is. Back with the last segment of the show, right after this. And welcome back into the show, and it's time for the final segment of the show. And you know what that means. It's time for the final drive. Look, why is everything the same in the NFL, but yet the results are different? Why are you playing under the same rules, the same salary cap? You got the same opportunity in free agency. You got everything that's level in terms of the rules, but yet some people don't know how to play them the right way. And that's the difference, man. So when I talk about parity in the NFL, it's real. But the reason that parity to me this year is the outlier is because there are certain teams that have figured it out and certain teams that have not. You will consistently see the well-run organizations be good. Even if they take a year or two off, a la the Patriots, they know how to get back in the driver's seat because they know what they're doing. Hey, don't forget, you can not only catch Move the Change right here on the Sports Leader WXTX Fox 54, but you can also catch us on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. It's at Move_the_Change. When you go to YouTube, subscribe, like, leave a comment because we are here for it. Hey, another banger for the best production crew in the business. I'm your boy, Jonathan Bam Rivers. And don't forget, always build every day of your life brick by brick. Until next time, right here on Move the Chains, God bless.